What's up, guys? Welcome back. I believe this will be part 12. So today, kind of the goal is I'm about to get this dash cover cluster, and I don't know about, I may can leave the wiring harness, but anyway, gonna get this ripped apart and get this dash bar fitted in the 70, and I'm just gonna probably cut the mounts off of the S197 dash and weld them onto this bar. As far as the sides go, the middle, I am just going to use the S550 dash mount, and then more or less, I think I showed it in the last video, more or less, you know, screw it into the trans tunnel where it needs to go, whether it's there or somewhere else. So let's get on it. All right, so the dash cover's off. This was probably one of the worst ones I've ever had to pull off, even over like a normal S550. I guess it's just got, you know, a couple extra wires, etc. The only thing that sucks is this dash has that little gash in it. So I hadn't decided if I'm gonna order an entire cover. I mean, that's like 400 bucks, but you can also get for like 60 bucks just the top dash cover. So I'm probably just gonna go that route. I have the bar over here, and I'm just gonna start by cutting all these side brackets off, because I know from the S197 one that had to be done anyways. So yeah, that's where I'm gonna kind of start at, and then get it sat in there and go from there. So I went ahead and just pulled the harness off of the bar here and kind of got it set in there. Now it's decently centered, and for the most part, like, it fits perfectly in between the 70 body with the external mounts cut off. Only problem I'm seeing is it's not going to work. I mean, I could modify this side to work with the S197 mount, but that side over there with it, you know, having the thicker part of the bar and stuff, I'm actually gonna have to cut the S197 mounts out. That kind of sucks. I mean, I hate doing work twice, but I think in the end, this will just be a much nicer interior this way. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I mean, I've already fit the airbox in there, and it's really just a matter of cutting those mounts off, getting this thing kind of set in there, and making new ones. So that's the route I'm gonna go. So let's get on it. Okay, so I came in here and cleaned up the sides, you know, kind of where the welds and stuff were, and the dash bar finally fits. Of course, now I need to get like the dash cover on it and the airbox, not the airbox, but the vents, and then we'll go from there and kind of figure out what needs to be trimmed to fit under the cowl and stuff. So, and two, I don't believe I'm going to end up having this back vent, but if you were to put it on defrost, it'll still come up, hit this, and defrost the window. But I will still have like the face vents and of course the foot vents. So that's, you know, that's the main thing in my opinion. Now it's just kind of getting this leveled up, squared up, and kind of the easiest way to do that is to go ahead and get the dash cover and vents, kind of at least 1 or 2 bolts holding those on, and go from there. Okay, so I got it, the dash and the console sitting in here. Nothing's hard mounted yet, but everything looks like it's going to fit pretty decent. These 2 studs on the S197 hole mounting points don't necessarily line up 100% on that, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of modification there. But for the most part, the console lines up to the dash pretty well. And then, of course, shut the door, everything fits. So, and it's centered. So, you know, I think where I'm at now is looking pretty decent. Now I just need to make a couple reference point marks, so I have an idea, not necessarily an idea, but really what it tells me is that where I have that piece set, I can go ahead and mount it squared up on the chassis and get those bolt holes lined up 100%, and then when I build the side dash mounts, it'll be more than good. And of course I have to take the dash cover off to do that. This dash is a little bit has a little bit more of a slimmer profile than the S197 apparently, because where this is at currently, the S197 one was still sticking up here. So really the S550 dash pretty much fits under the cowl. So, you know, there is a piece of plastic trim that I can put there, and so once it's in, it's gonna look pretty decent, I think. So yeah, here's where I'm at. Now it's time to start getting things hard mounted. So now I've got the bar secured in here to the trans mount, chassis level, and then so is my dash bar. So that's kind of like the easy, simplest way to make sure everything is decently level anyways. You can kind of tell too here on the airbox, depending on how I hold the camera, that it's level to the airbox. I already know I can take the dash in and out from here. Now, there are some bolts that are hidden. And I think the ones from the back don't get used anymore because of parts I cut off the dash. So I could install the dash cover in and out from here. So it would be easiest just to weld this dash bar in, especially because I can remove the dash cover. The only thing is in the future, if you ever need to replace like the heater core or something, it's going to be a pain. So I don't know. Again, I've already got that mount at least, and then it's just a matter of figuring out the best way to kind of mount the sides here. So I'm sure I'll come up with something, but for now, the dash bar's level. I can stick the dash skin back in here and bolt it in, no issues, and everything's like lining up pretty decent. So all I did was use this piece of poster board to more or less template that out. Now, it is exactly the same, but all I'm going to do is use these to cut individual pieces of metal out to seal those holes up there, since now my HVAC is going to come out here. And you can kind of see where I kind of drew a line there. I need to plasma that out and build like an insert, more or less, to kind of go in about 1 inch, just to make sure all that's good and sealed up. I don't want to leave a gap there. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to get ready to do now. I've already transferred the 2 big holes over to the sheet metal, just some scrap sheet metal, and I'm about to plasma them out. Alright, so I'm working on enclosing the sides there, and what I did is just kind of took this like contour template maker deal, whatever you call it, and kind of made this rough template. I did have to add a little bit of a recess there, but you'll get the point. It pretty much will fit in there just like that. I'm probably just going to bring this line down smoothly to here. I did trim this back as much as I could, but more or less that'll seal that gap up. And I'll probably come in here with like my hammer, my body hammer, and just, flatten this down into the actual chassis there. That way I can get, welded around, and then of course weld here. And that's where I cut the S197 dash mounts out. I'm still going to come back, smooth those up some, but the dash bar is going to go over that. So, yeah, it'll kind of more or less fit in there like that. Okay, so I did end up welding in just that kind of, not oval, but the other piece. And I noticed the firewall was starting to, not necessarily warp, but it was getting a little bit of slack in it. And I didn't really want any rattling. So instead of just doing the same thing with the other holes, what I went ahead and did, and it's not pretty yet, but I'm also not done. I got to come back and do some more welding. But what I decided to do is I actually just cut this piece of sheet metal and kind of tack welded it in on the back. I drilled 2 holes in the piece I welded into the firewall, and more or less used those 2 holes as well as the other holes that were open to plug weld this in. And then obviously I tack welded around it, and I'm going to add more to that. But what that did, it strengthened the firewall up a lot. There's no more, more or less like when you press on it, there's no more flexible whatever. So like I said, it's ugly, but I just kind of came in and ground it down. And I'm probably going to come in and tack weld this piece even more. That's tack weld pretty well. There's 2 plugs in there. I'm pretty sure I had 1 hole there that I plug welded, and I drilled another one here for a plug weld. Plug that, and also plug that. So that should give it a nice structure front and rear. Yeah, like I said, there's really no flex in that. So as long as it's strong, that's my main thing. Because like I said, I'm going to come in here, tack weld some more, smooth this down, and if it still doesn't look as pretty as I want it, I'll just go ahead as I'm doing some body work on the car and just put a little bit of filler in here just to smooth it. But at the end of the day, that goes behind the engine. So I'm not too concerned with it. For me, the main thing is going to be, for something like this, strength and then of course making sure it's sealed well enough to keep smoke or, you know, exhaust gas, whatever, out of the cabin. So, which it will be, because also I do plan on coming back and seam sealing this, kind of like I did that. So yeah, I'm just trying to get everything in the front done, because I think what I'm going to go ahead and do once I have all this sealed up, because one of the last few things will be I come in here and seal the sides over here and then kind of up there. And I am going to add a little, I haven't quite decided what I'm going to add to the outside here, in between there for some structure. And of course I am going to sheet metal this in. So, and I'm thinking for the outside, I'm going to use something thicker, obviously. So it won't just be the 16 or 18 gauge sheet metal like I did on the inside. But I'd like to have something else as well. So, I mean, a couple people, I think, have actually added in like some 2x3 in here. Actually, what I was kind of considering doing was doing something from here into the frame rail underneath the car. And that's probably the route I'm going to go. And then kind of, like, I may leave the seats, but I'm also thinking about doing a half cage, which will kind of, you know, follow those pillars there. And then I was going to bring it down out of the way of the back seats and then like do an X over the back seats, possibly. So, but yeah, to keep from rambling, that is what I got done today. The firewall is coming along nicely. Not done, quite done, but in the next day or two, I should have it done. So my seam sealer had kind of decided to dry up. So I ended up just cutting the top off and kind of using my finger just to keep it from going to waste. But more or less, I just went ahead and kind of, I did weld on, you know, add a bunch more tack welds to that as well as the outside. And then just more or less seam sealed it there. And then I got this piece put in, and you can kind of see it's a little bit messy, but the dash sits pretty much here. So all that's covered anyway. At the end of the day, it's more about the function. So got this piece welded in and actually, you know, hammered into place, did pretty well. So more or less this entire side now, from the cowl down, on the inside at least, is tied together. So I did, you can see here, I did also weld it into the cowl. So as of right now, I mean, the car's pretty solid. I mean, there's no flex or any kind of distortion between the roof and the chassis. And of course, like I said, I am going to come in here and do something. Of course, this will be thicker metal. So yeah, and all I did on the outside was I did add a couple more tack welds, and then I kind of just used some rust converter sprayed on there, which it hadn't rusted yet, but just to kind of keep it from rusting anyway. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. I just took a picture of this. I'm thinking what I'm going to do is go up here and 3D print a like a bezel insert for it, and kind of see what I think of that. Worst case, I can use it as a template. So update you guys in a bit. So here's like the Firewall template I 3D printed out of ABS. So, and there it is. You know, honestly, that looks super good. Fits flush. Of course, there's a little bit of a gap there, but that's just the nature of the firewall itself. But yeah, so I'm thinking for the final piece, I may even come in here and add some recessed holes where I can screw it in, or maybe do some kind of epoxy where it like gets glued in, and that may be the best route. So I think from here, what I need to do is just fit the air box, and I know this shape will fit that. The actual outline, I just want to make sure that like the air box isn't going to be pushing on this, or it's not going to be pushing on the air box. So I may have to adjust the depth some, but you know, overall, I like the way that's looking. Okay, so I got this side in. It's pretty much the same thing I did as that side. I just didn't video that side. But I do believe I'm gonna let it cool a bit and then come in here and fill in that top gap there, just pretty much all the way. Just because that is kind of, you know, to the outside of the car, whereas this is overlapped. It'll tie it into the cowl, you know, even better. But that'll kind of get the cabin area, for the most part, sealed up on the inside.
I did order some PA6 carbon fiber nylon 3D printer material, so I can 3D print one of those, and that it's heat resistant up to like 600 degrees. That's ABS, it won't last in the engine bay. So I am going to wait to install everything until I can get one of those printed, and I believe I'm just going to glue it in from the outside and then come back on the inside, and then of course when you put the air box in, it'll seal up against that. Okay, so over the last few days, I've been working on the car slowly, but just kind of doing what I can do. So on the outside, and I'm just gonna fully seam weld that. I'm just doing it kind of slowly, try to cut down on warpage. I did come in here and tack weld more into that. Also on the inside panels, you can kind of see where I went around and added even more. Kind of the same deal on this side. And on the quarter panel, I've been working on it today. So I kind of come in here and got it trimmed, you know, kind of close as far as following the factory. I mean, it doesn't follow it exactly, but this is going to be welded a seam. So, yeah, so I got it more or less pretty close fit. The back piece here, I sectioned this so it would fit, you know, kind of like nice up in there. And two, I also have another set of quarter panels. So this one's kind of just like, I guess you'd say, my practice one, but if I can make it work, I will. But worst case, if I mess it up beyond repair, I got another one. So kind of the biggest deal with this, it was trying to figure out how to get it to set flush with the factory cover there. And I mean, you could see, obviously, it's not mounted or anything, but it's got some movement there. But for now, let's see. So right there, following the factory line, and you can kind of pull out on this. So kind of see the idea. It'll more than sit flush now, whereas before it wouldn't. So that was kind of something I was worried about, but now, and I still have the factory piece of metal here, which is it was kind of messed up pretty bad. So I also kept the piece I cut out of this because I do need to go ahead and add more or less like a seam just like this back in here, so the body gaps will be good. I also considered, because I was going to do like a wing for this, so I may actually use like metal body filler to fill all this in and make it seamless, and then that piece wouldn't be that big a deal, because then I actually could just weld straight to the panel here. So hadn't quite decided on how I'm going to do that, but I am a step closer as far as getting the panels fitted. And actually, on the driver's side, So that side, you know, I'd removed all this. Like I said, when I started this car, I removed more than I needed to, but it was in, you know, preparation. I was going to do a full quarter and all that. But since then, you know, I've kind of figured out, you know, all this metal in here is good, so I didn't have to cut it out. So that's why I added this panel back. And on this side, you know, I've yet to pull this piece out. So more or less what I'm going to do on this side is section the panel to more or less tie in right here, so I can just keep the factory body line and it won't be as big a deal. So definitely learning a lot as I go on this car. Obviously, I think I'm to the point now where I'm not making as many mistakes as I did at the beginning, and that's mainly just for the fact of you know, I've got more experience under my belt. So in the future, this will probably be the only body swap I do, because I think in the future I'm just going to build my own chassis. At this point, you know, the amount of work of tying all this in, and of course, you know, I did make it a little bit harder on myself by deciding to use the S550 stuff in the S197, but that's fine. So anyways, long story short, in the future, I think I'll just build my own chassis, but trying to plug away on it and keep going. All right, so I'm finishing up for the day, and you know, more or less, I kind of figured it's better to make a bad decision than it is to sit here and contemplate making no decisions. So what I ended up doing, and it just, like I said, it just kind of come down to cutting this piece out, kind of, you know, getting all that fit back is just a little extra work that I won't have to do on the other side, but I spliced it in here, and then, you know, cut that to fit best I could, and for now, it's just kind of spot welded in. And I still have the piece I cut out here, so I can add it back. But I went ahead, and what I did, my wife had the tripod. She was up there making a cooking video, but so I didn't video this. But basically what I did is this was overlapped, and I just cut both of them at the same time. And that made a perfect seam, more or less, to fit this flush. And then I did end up having to kind of shave down some of the one of these wet spot welds in here and pull this panel out for the door to line up. But more or less, that's not too bad. I mean, from this angle, the gap looks a little worse than it actually is. It's really not too bad. And that's without adjusting the door at all. So for the most part, I believe I have pretty close to a 3/16 gap. The bottom looks a little bit tighter, but you know, all that's kind of can be fixed. So yeah, it's a little bit, well, not too bad though. But for the most part, I got a 3/16 gap up the door. That right there, of course, I'll just shave it down, and then I can always come back with a little bit of filler here, metal filler, you know, and then get all these kind of shaped. So for the most part, I'm pretty happy with that body line, especially considering how this quarter's kind of, you know, widened. It is widened like 1.5 inches in the middle there, and then I do still plan to have this line up how it should. And as you can see, by cutting the release in the arch, I was able to pull these out. And that gives me a whole lot more clearance over this this is a 315 or 305. And I know a lot of people with like the doing these kind of swaps, they'll shorten the axle and all that. It just wasn't worth it to me, because I have to order new axles after I shorten the tube, etc. But this will still line up in the factory location. Then of course, I'm going to make sure all these are relatively in line when I weld them together, so those will all kind of be flush. And this will be the biggest gap right here that I have to contend with. And like I said, I do have another set of quarters, so I may actually cut some out of those and kind of use here. I hadn't decided yet. But yeah, so I'll kind of have, it'll probably have similar to the same gap in the back right there, but it will fit these tires, you know, super well. And from the rear, or even the front, it's still going to look like a factory quarter panel. You know, you don't have any of those gaudy flares, etc. You know, to be honest, when I started the day, I was a little bit concerned with everything, you know, I had left to do, and was like, man, did I mess up here or there? But kind of where I'm at now, where I kind of finished the day, I'm pretty happy with it. Like, it's looking pretty good. And once everything's kind of cleaned up, body worked, it'll look a lot better. So that body line is pretty much spot on. And, you know, it still lands in the factory location. So guys, so I'm back out here today. And I kind of was just looking at this quarter panel, and it hit me. If I were to kind of put a relief here, I could actually bend this bottom part out, and I wouldn't have that awkward angle, and then it'll line up pretty damn close, just like that. And I went ahead and did pretty much the same thing in the rear, and I just cut, this piece out of the box, because I will secure that, and then I may have to come up with something for this, but it does get rid of that awkward angle. And now there's probably going to be some, a decent amount of body work to be done, especially because I'm not a professional metal worker. But overall, the shape that I'm wanting is pretty much here. I've pretty much got it. Now it'll just be a matter of, welding all this together. And of course, there'll be some warpage, some shrinkage, stuff like that. So get it as close as I can in metal, and then kind of go with body work from there. So just a little quick update as far as not having this awkward angle anymore. That pretty much takes care of my entire arch. Okay, so for the most part, I pretty much have the rear of the panel tied into the taillight panel now. And I don't know if you can tell, but what I did is, the factory piece I'd cut there, and this was the stock piece of metal that came with the aftermarket sheet metal, and it just didn't line up right. So I'd cut this piece off, but I kept it. And I basically shaped the inside to give me some room, some wiggle room in and out here. And then I TIG welded the seam back together with some stainless filler. And I've got it, pretty much smoothed down. I don't think I'm gonna grind anymore, just so I don't want it to crack. And then I used a hole puncher to punch these holes and come back and fill that, kind of like spot weld it, plug weld it, whatever you want to call it. But let's see, that still pretty much lines right up with the factory body line. And then my fitment over here is spot on. And a little bit of a gap in the middle there, which something like that, I'm actually not that concerned with using filler for. I just don't want to be filling like big holes and stuff with filler. So I'm sure some of the small shaping that needs to be done, I'll use filler to do it. And I'll probably try to use metal filler where I can. So, but yeah, that pretty much, actually I'm going to say that turned out a lot better than, maybe not than I expected, but yesterday I was stressing a little bit how I was going to make everything line up. And in my opinion, just making the decision to start doing was the right decision, because now today, I've pretty much got this installed here. The front's done. Now it's just a matter of kind of getting, the bottom of the panel connected, even if I don't worry about this arch right now, but kind of get it there. And then more or less get the rear where I want it, and then build the wheel tubs from there. And for me, I kind of decided that instead of trying to build the wheel tubs first or whatnot, because I'm not using factory wheel tubs, it'd be easier for me anyway to get the panel where I wanted it and the shape and all that done, and then kind of just build the wheel tubs to fit. So in hindsight, I'm glad I went this route, and I'm really hoping the driver's side is a little bit easier just because I have more material to work with. So let's get on it. So this is the factory bottom piece of the quarter panel here. And basically what I did is I put it in here and marked that line and then cut it to fit. And I believe what I'm going to do now is cut this piece of the rocker off. That way it kind of sits flush with where my arch lands. And then I really don't think it's going to look too bad just leaving the arch open. And then that also, there's really no weird angle. So I basically turned the arch into a flare, I guess you'd say. So, and then of course I'll have to shorten it, make it fit there. But overall, this is the route I'm going to go, and I'll update you guys once I get it. So I have this bottom piece held in by some butt weld clamps. I did cut that gap a little bit bigger than I wanted, but I have it sitting flush here, so I'm just gonna have to fill that gap. I have clecos in the back, and I've cut the rocker there, and I believe here's like the stock piece that goes, like this. I believe what I'm gonna do is trim it to fit where it'll kind of flare out and just meet the flare. So at the end of the day, you still end up with a stock body, and it's just, looks like it comes from the factory that way. and I think that'll look pretty decent. So that's where I'm at with it. And you know, once I get to the back, I don't really know, I haven't figured out quite what I'm going to do there yet, and I may not do anything because for the most part that's just kind of where the factory quarter rides, and then you just got like the rear valence. So yeah, update you guys soon. So this is what I was talking about as far as taking the stock rocker and kind of flipping it outward to finish that flare. So it actually fits, you know, super nicely. For now, I just have this riveted in. I'm probably going to leave the rivets. They're aluminum, and I'll probably add some tack welds in the back. I still got to cut a piece to fill in there. This has been pretty much seam welded, and I come back with my hammer and kind of tapped it, you know, from the back and the front to get it decently smooth. So again, stuff like this is probably what I'm going to come back with, like some metal filler first and do. But this lip will eventually be rolled, but first, of course, I got to get everything welded and then get the wheel tub in. But once that's rolled, I mean, and I probably could even bend these up some more if I need to, but for the most part, the axle should be centered. Just kind of taking some measurements and looking under the car. So more or less, as I'll do the same thing on the other side and fit the quarter panel to the wheel. But yeah, it's pretty much spot on. I believe once that's rolled, and then of course with it sitting down on the ground, I think it'll be damn near perfect. So, but actually I'm super happy with how this looks, because I did shorten that rocker a good bit. I cut probably, I don't know, it used to stick out to there, and now it's cut to like right behind that. So I probably cut 1.5 inches out of the rocker. But overall, I think it's gonna look super good. Wheels perfectly center in there. So, yep. Turned into a lot, you know, a decent amount of work, but I think for what I'm wanting and what I'm gonna get, I think it'll be worth it. So, and for now, not for now, but I went ahead and sanded, you know, this with some 100 grit, and now I'm pretty sure on like these tighter gaps, I'm just gonna come through here and TIG weld them. I'm TIG welding what I can, and then MIG welding, you know, what is a little bit bigger, stuff like that. So these will probably be MIG'd, obviously, and I think I'm gonna try these from the back, and maybe that'll kind of help with not having to grind as much and keep most of the shape in that arch. So yeah. So I just set it on the ground real quick so you can kind of get an idea. Granted, it is leaning to the other side because I don't have a wheel on that side, but yeah, there you go. This thing's gonna be super wide and aggressive, and it should sit pretty low because, we'll see, yeah, I mean, there's still a decent amount of room from the chassis to the ground there. So, but yeah, pretty happy with this. So this is kind of in depth, I'd say, but well worth the time spent way to kind of do a wide body with like a quarter panel and no stupid flares. So from here, it's really just going to be finishing this up, getting that closed up. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do that yet. And then it'll be on to the other side. So I'm working on the arch now, and I really can't think of a better way to do this. These gaps are kind of too small to cut and, you know, cut sheets of metal to put in there, in my opinion. I've looked at maybe some metal filler, stuff like that, but I just don't really like any of those options. Obviously, that's big enough to cut a piece of metal to fit in there, but kind of here. So what I've done so far, and maybe some of you can give me some ideas maybe on what to do on the other side, but more or less is I've used these butt weld clamps to make sure my panel's pretty much as aligned best it can be, you know, on the arch. And then I kind of come in here with a pair of linemans and aligned all these by eye. And so far what I've done is just tack weld just the very tip, and I use this little thing I made with some aluminum so it can kind of go behind there. But obviously there's going to be some shrinkage through here. I don't really know of a better way to do this, so I think I'm just going to go this route. I did have, when I welded this, I did have some shrinkage there, and I was able to get back there with the hammer and dolly and kind of hammer it more or less. It's pretty straight, especially compared to what it was. And I'm not done as far as smoothing this, so I think I'm just going to go the same route I did there on these, and then I just need to figure out what I'm going to do with this. And for the most part, the panel will be in, aside from the back, and I don't think I'm going to quite weld this in yet, just because I want to, I got to get some of this fixed, and I want to get the other panel in, and then I have the original valence, and I like to get it on there and just kind of make sure everything back here is going to line up and actually still have a little bit of movement in case I need it. Okay, so y'all remember what they looked like before, and this is after. So, and I didn't video any of this. I'll video it on the other side. I just wanted to be sure it would turn out good first. Yeah, I'm happy with this. So what I started off by doing was kind of tack welding from the back, and then filled it best I could. And I'd like to pull the axle out to get in there better, but I do need both wheels mounted to the other side. So instead of doing that, after I did it the first round, I come through here and kind of sanded these down, and then I just filled them from the top, and kind of the initial, I just busted them down with the flap disc, and then I went to the handheld belt sander, and this actually worked super well. So just kind of used that to make it all flush, and then I did fill some gaps a second time. Now this is just kind of like, a rough shape, but the metal for the most part is smooth. I think it's like 80 grit, so it does have a roughness to it, but you get my point. It's not all pitted, etc. I am going to come through here and shape the bottom a little bit better, but at the end of the day, the bottom is going to be rolled, so I'm not quite as concerned with that as the top. So it still maintains a nice arch, and it will need some shaping done by hand to make it just perfectly smooth. But for where I'm at, I'm happy with this. And really the last thing to do on this quarter is fill in this gap, and it'll be, for the most part, mounted. It'll just be like a little bit of TIG welding to get all this closed up. But as far as it being really mounted to the car, it's pretty much there, and I'm gonna say that I am more happy with this than I thought I would be at the get-go. So far so good, and I'll video more of how I did this on the other side. Okay, so this went so well that I actually tried it here. I like the way that's looking, so more or less, whether right, wrong, or indifferent, I figured either way the panel's going to start, it's going to have some warp to it. You'll have to kind of shape that out because, this seam here. So my other option is to cut a thin piece of metal, but then it's going to need butt welded on two sides. And to me, that's just going to put just as much heat, if not more, into this panel. And this isn't structural. So kind of what I've decided to do, and you can see where I've already kind of started, is just go very slow and fill this gap. And I'm going to come back and smooth it down. And then go from there. So, I mean, realistically, the panel's still pretty straight considering what I've done, and I'm doing, just enough building a bridge here, there, and I'm just moving down, letting it cool. So we'll see, end result, what this turns out like. But to me, I don't see this being any more, causing any more warpage than, say, adding another piece in here and then butt welding two sides. So I am still I believe I'm going to cut this piece out. That was kind of like one of my original pieces, and it does have a piece of metal behind it. So I do believe I'm going to cut that out, just so as I go I can keep, working these panels both ways. So just kind of update here. I don't know exactly how this is going to turn out, but it's not structural, and as long as, it's just not super crazy, I can feel it. And at the end of the day, my end goal is for the body to be smooth, and I think that can still be achieved doing it this way. Okay, so I'm finishing up for today anyway. Got the arch pretty much welded up. I got the big gap welded up, and I've hammered on it and sanded it, etc. And there is a little bit of a divot inward from where it shrunk. However, I don't have anything protruding, so that won't be hard to fill. So that's probably as good as it's going to get. That's just a piece of paint there. But I've considered getting lead filler, but again, I don't know, if you don't do that just right, it won't want to stick right and stuff. So I don't know, either or. I hadn't quite decided on that yet, but I am going to get some filler and fill this, whether it's lead or, you know, just your standard filler. And I think this will be perfectly smooth. Welding on that didn't cause any issues anywhere else in the panel. Panel's still very straight. So, yeah. Now all that's really is left is to finish welding all this, and then of course come back, grind it, sand it down, etc. But I may wait on that till I do the other side. I think this will be the end of this video. I think I've said that a couple times, but at least now I've kind of got through the whole process of getting this quarter mounted, at least the way I'm going to do it. And I'll just give you kind of one more look. Again, that's just the stock rocker flared out to meet this flare. And I'm ready to see this thing as a full body sitting on the ground. I think it's going to look good. So, yeah. And before, you know, any of you say that like that's wrong or whatever, I'm just going to call this additive manufacturing. So you can give a robot a MIG welder, and they call that additive manufacturing. So that's exactly what I'm going to call this. So yeah, for the most part, that panel's done, and I'll see you guys in the next video.